name is Aegon Targaryen. He's a legitimate son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, meaning that he's not a bastard, although there's a lot of contention over the last name Sand that Bran gave him. We'll discuss that, but there are a couple of important Aegons in the book, so it gets a little confusing in a really important historical Aegon. So this will be all about the four different versions of Aegon and sort of the deeper meaning that is Jon Snow's name, and what it will be if he actually became king of the Seven Kingdoms by himself or with Daenerys. Right now, you could just call him Aegon, but if he actually sat on the throne, his formal name would be Aegon the Sixth, just because he's the sixth Aegon to sit on the throne. So the commonly held belief is that it was actually Lyanna that chose to name him Aegon, whether or not Rhaegar had that in mind before he went to the Trident. Because you have to remember that Rhaegar had ridden for the Trident, was killed by Robert Baratheon before Jon Snow was actually born. That's why the Kingsguard were still the Tower of Joy. Because one, Rhaegar wanted to protect his new wife and child because they were precious to him, but also because he believed that Jon Snow, or Aegon Targaryen, however you want to think about him, was the child of prophecy. Now, you could also say that he was thinking that he would be the crown prince should Rhaegar die, but I don't think that he truly believed that he would die at the Trident, and there are a lot of other crazy decisions that Rhaegar made. He was obsessed with prophecy. So if there's any reason why he left the best sword in the kingdom, Arthur Dayne, protecting that baby, it's because of the prophecy. There's a lot of people that have been back and forth on how crazy Rhaegar was and what kind of a person he was based on what Sir Barristan Selmy has said about him and based on what other people have said. But all we know is that he was a little bit crazy and really in love with Lyanna Stark. But you have to remember that he also set aside his other wife, Elia Martell, with his other son, who was also named Aegon Targaryen. So we'll talk about the other Aegons in a second, but the reason why Lyanna probably chose the name Aegon is because of Aegon the Conqueror, because it was the name of the most famous person in the history of Westeros and his ancestor. So it was just a really popular name. Like I said, he would have been Aegon the Sixth, so it was a really popular name just in the line of succession. You have to imagine that there were all kinds of Targaryen cousins that were also probably named Aegon. They just weren't anywhere near the throne. So you have to imagine that in Rhaegar's mind, this prince who was promised would be like what Daenerys has right now. The person with the three dragons, like Aegon the Conqueror, he would save us all from the long night. So because he was so obsessed with the culmination of this prophecy, he set aside his other wife, Elia Martell, with his two other children, Rhaenys and then Aegon. So the whole idea is that he wanted three children, and the Maesters said that Elia Martell wouldn't be able to have a third child. So that sounds like the point at which he bailed and went and married Lyanna Stark and had the child with her. So here's the funny thing. He actually expected Jon Snow to be born a woman, or at least hoped that, because think about it this way. He already had a son named Aegon and Rhaenys, and he was all about bringing back Aegon the Conqueror, this person of prophecy, the prince who was promised. Who was Aegon's other sister? It was Visenya. So that's probably what he would have named Jon Snow had he been born a woman. And he would have gotten his three children. That's what he wanted. The dragon must have three heads. And he wanted it to be a repeat of Aegon the Conqueror with his three dragons. So poor Jon Snow just can't catch a break. I guess that also means that Rhaegar would have expected his other baby Aegon with Elia Martell to marry his two sisters. That would have been a little bit weird. If you think that Jon Snow and Daenerys on the TV show is weird now, it would have been even weirder if it would have been like Aegon the Conqueror's two sister wives. So that's sort of the reason why Jon Snow is named Aegon. Whether or not Lyanna came up with that by herself, or whether Rhaegar helped her come to that name, she was the one who actually named it. So most people give her credit for the name Aegon. But what about the other two Aegons in modern day? So you have the son of Elia and Rhaegar, who became a bastard when he annulled his marriage to Elia. There's a lot of questions about what would have happened to them had they survived and not been killed by the mountain at the end of Robert's Rebellion. Even though they would have no longer been royals, they would have been royal bastards, so they still would have been kept in a life of luxury in King's Landing somewhere, or somewhere nearby. Because being a royal bastard is still relatively distasteful, but it's much better than being a bastard of a lesser house. You don't get spit on quite as much. So what happened is everyone believed that version of Aegon, who was only about a year old at the end of Robert's Rebellion, was killed by the mountain, and people just believed that he was dead. Like the mountain dashed him against the wall, and that was the end of it. But many years later in the book, sort of in present day, this young Griff character comes forward, John Connington, Illyrio, and Varys back him as the true son of Rhaegar. No, we switched the baby out, the one that's